At number 5 is Myles Gaskin. Now, taking on the Jets this week, he's taking on a team that is allowing 30 points on average to running backs this season. Gaskin has had 14-plus fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games and continues to be the lead back for that Dolphins offense. At number 4, it's Devonta Freeman versus the Washington football team. Now, the hole of Saquon Barkley is still being felt for the Giants, but Devonta Freeman is stepping it on up. His touches, his yards, and his fantasy points have increased in each game since signing with the Giants, and he looks to keep that going against Washington, who has allowed 143 rushing yards per game since week 3. All right, it's number 3. It's Brandon Cooks, and he's going to be cooking it up because he had a huge game last Sunday against the Jaguars, finishing with 30 fantasy points. Now, we all thought Will Fuller was going to be the lead receiver option for Deshaun Watson, but Cooks and he had other plans for that. He led the team in routes, targets, receptions, and yards in week 5. All right, let's go to number 2. It's getting down. I talked about this guy earlier. It's Chase Edmonds. He's oh so good, and he's taking on the Dallas Cowboys on Monday night. Now, why do we love this? Because he's getting nearly 5 targets per game this season and will face the Cowboys defense that is giving up the second most rushing yards per game since week 3. All right, it's time for the number 1 spot, and it's Mecole Hardman at the Buffalo Bills on Monday night. No, this is not a homer pick either. It's because Sammy Watkins is going to miss some time with some hamstring injuries, which boosts the fantasy stock of Mecole Hardman. Now, Hardman has had a touchdown in 2 of the last 3 games and averages just over 10 fantasy points per game when the Chiefs are without Sammy Watkins. So facing the Bills on Monday, Hartman looks like a must start against a team that is allowing 14 receptions a game to wide receivers this season. All right, that's going to do it for me. Those are my 5 flex plays, for week 6.
Gives it inside, and running with it is Sanders. He's got a first down and more. 40, 45, 50, 45, 40, 35, 30, 25, 20, 10, 5. Touchdown! Miles Sanders! He exploded! He gives to Sanders, who spins forward. Is he in? Yes! Second touchdown of the game for Miles Sanders.
Miles Sanders' best game of the season brings us to Higher or Lower with Cynthia Frelund. It's the home version of everybody's favorite game. I give a projection, and Cynthia tells us whether or not that player is going to go higher or lower in their game in week 6. We will start with the aforementioned Miles Sanders, 80-plus rushing yards in 3 of 4 games this season, facing Baltimore, who's given up just under 74 running yards per game to running backs all season. So higher or lower than 80 for Miles this week.
Oh no, I have a lower here. So we're starting off with that circle on the lower. Why? Even though he had a great performance against the Steelers, who are really good against running backs, in this one against the Ravens, it's going to be a little bit different in terms of game script because, the Steelers, they were really good at both against the pass and against the run. The Ravens, you're going to have to escape more pressure even again this week, again and again. So 67 rush yards, 3 receptions, 31 yards. That's the projection for him, but there is a rushing touchdown there, so not all is lost.
There we go. Next up, Kareem Hunt. At least 1 touchdown in 4 of 5 games this week against Pittsburgh, who've allowed just 4 touchdowns to running backs all season. So higher or lower than 1 score for Kareem Hunt?
Draw that star for me. That's my favorite thing when you get the number exactly right. There's the star, Kareem Hunt at Pittsburgh. This is an interesting one. He's had 1+ scrimmage touchdown in 4 of 5 games this season, 6 scrimmage touchdowns this season, so tied for 3rd amongst running backs. You're right, Pittsburgh does allow just the 4 scrimmage yards touchdowns to running backs this year. However, this one's all about game script too, and keeping Baker Mayfield clean is going to be the prescription here. There's a lot of pressure coming from the Steelers, the highest pressure percentage in the NFL. That's how they did against the Colts. That's how they're going to run it back against the Steelers as well.
Last week, a rough one for Joe Burrow, but he's averaging nearly 261 passing yards per game. That's 16th among quarterbacks. Now he faces Indianapolis, who has not allowed a 250-yard passer all season. So higher or lower than 249 for Joey Burrow this week.
Okay, we're going lower in this one. I have 240 passing yards projected. Remember, in every single game, that includes when the Browns beat the Indianapolis Colts, the quarterback is thrown for 40 or more yards fewer in each game. So you want to look here, okay, What's the game script? We got to keep Joe Burrow out from under pressure. We got to keep this nice and efficient. That means more Joe Mixon, less Joe Burrow. Not a bad thing. 2 touchdowns projection. Yes, an interception. 22 rush yards. Just keep him clean. Keep him passing. Prevent what happened last week from happening again. Get him back in the groove. More tempo here.
Let's shift over to Kirk Cousin. He's averaging 274 passing yards per game, facing a defense who's let quarterbacks throw for a ton of yards. In fact, the Falcons have given up a 300-yard passer in every game so far this year. So higher or lower than Cousins' average of 274?
I have higher in this one. Not a ton higher. I have 281 passing yards projected and 2 touchdowns. That's over 19 fantasy points, so you really want to consider him this week. If you look to see what happened with midseason changes for coaches, so this happened 37 times, and only 14 times has that team won. So teams don't typically fire their coach in the middle of the season when they're doing really well. And if you look to see where the Falcons are really exploitable, it is on their defense. So this means Kirk Cousins, who we saw fare really well against the Seattle Seahawks, he's going to have another good one here. And I think Justin Jefferson has a kind of get-right situation as well.
Let's look at Thielen, or Cousins' number 1 target, Adam Thielen, higher or lower than 85 receiving yards this week?
Circle that higher yet again. I tried to give you the okie doke here by telling you I like Justin Jefferson, but I really like Adam Thielen in this one. Why? It's all of those deep targets that he gets. I have 88 yards projected on 7 receptions and a touchdown. Reliable Thielen strikes again. He's going to have those nice deep targets from Kirk Cousins. This is going to be some nice fantasy stacking for you.
Next up, Bears wide receiver Allen Robinson, his 90 yards a game facing off against Carolina, where receivers are getting just 138 yards per game. That's 3rd fewest in the NFL. So higher or lower than 90 receiving yards for A-Rob?
I'm going lower in this one, but actually surprisingly not much lower. I have 81 projected on 6 receptions, but the touchdown does occur here. I know we saw some craziness last Thursday night, and yes, it did result in a win. But I honestly believe that Matt Nagy, now with a bit more time and kind of Foles and the whole thing sort of coming together, he's going to have a plan for the Panthers. It's not going to be a ton of passing yards. That's not a spoiler alert for anyone. But Allen Robinson will be the number 1 target.
All right, we'll finish up with tight end Evan Ingram, his 3.5 receptions per game. He's facing the Washington football team, who's allowing just over 5 receptions a game, higher or lower than 4 grabs for Evan Ingram.
Draw that star for me because you nailed it with 4 receptions. It's my favorite. 47 receiving yards and 4 receptions. Notice there is no touchdown projected in that one for me. The Washington Football Club, they have a mark on Evan Ingram. They have a mark on Darius Slayton. This is going to be one of the games where they're going to look to prove something. They've got a lot of good juju on their side. All the Alex Smith love. They're going to have a good plan for this one. I don't love any of the situations for the pass catchers in this Washington game. I don't dislike Darius Slayton, but I don't love it for everyone.